What is your biggest
And that was
issue
that.
now with the transfer portal? Because I mean, it's happening now during this season still happening. Like, what needs to
Yeah.
change here?
Um, I mean, first of all, it's that like we gotta move it till after the season. That's step number one. Step two, I would say like it's hard because anytime you offer a solution, everybody takes it as though you're not a proponent of like players having agency over their own lives and own careers, which you obviously want that, but there needs to be a middle ground of some sort. And yeah, I don't know. I would maybe like to see like a one-time transfer thing with like you can transfer one school one time, and then after that there need to be certain circumstances like if your coach leaves or like some sort of hardship waiver, stuff like that, like which is how it was for forever. I do think the old system of a guy transferring and then having to sit out a year just because he transferred. That's insane, and I don't want that to come back. But yeah, it is the Wild West, and it's interesting because I don't think there's a single person in the sport that enjoys it. I don't even know if the players enjoy it, to be completely honest. I mean, they enjoy the paychecks and they enjoy having their value driven up by having all these teams compete or vie for their services or whatever. But it doesn't feel like there's a lot of uncertainty with the players too, and a lot of these guys are entering the portal, and the ones that get all the attention are the ones that are going to get $2 million a year or whatever it is, whatever number is being thrown out there. But there are just as many guys that enter the portal don't end up on a team next year, and those stories don't get talked about. But like that is an issue, and I think it's because like that's just become the norm. The season ends, you end the portal, you see who wants you, who doesn't, and in the game of musical chairs, there's going to be a lot of guys left out. So I would like to see maybe everybody can transfer once because of course like we don't expect 17-year-olds to make decisions that they have to stick with for the rest of their lives. You get to campus, it's not what you thought it'd be, go transfer somewhere else, but then when you transfer, let's be sure you know where you're going and like what the setup is and all that, and maybe that would help a little bit. But I just don't see how they're ever going to be able to enforce that, and I think that's the problem is the NCAA is just toothless at this point, and there's nobody in control. Everybody says this is a bad idea, but there's nobody that's stepping up, like taking the wheel and making these decisions, really.
If you were the commissioner of college, just say all college sports in general, and we'll move from portal to NIL, like what needs to happen? Because it is the Wild West, and I've done a lot of NIL deals with Arkansas players and all completely legal. But I mean,
Yeah.
the regulations those regulations that at the beginning of NIL that were in place aren't even in place now. So it's even wilder than it was.
Yeah.
What would you do now as commissioner of college?
We got to have some sort of contracts, which is a slippery slope because they're the idea that these are student athletes and that they're doing this as like an extra career. The NCAA still exists to frame these basketball players as though they are college students who happen to in their free time play basketball. We all know that that's not the case. That's insane. But I don't know. If you make them sign contracts, you're basically you've just turned college basketball into the NBA, which is fine in some aspects, but in other aspects, it's like, then what's if you're directly competing with the NBA, then what is the point of college basketball? And that becomes a little hazy. I honestly, Bobby, I don't know what the fix is, and that's what makes it so confusing. Is that like I think the cat is out of the bag. I think the NCAA would have been well served to anticipate this coming for years. They didn't. They sat on their hands. They tried to protect the amateur model for as long as they could. Congress stepped in, and then now it's a free for all. And I have no idea how this is ever going to be solved because, like you said, like these NIL deals, nobody even really knows what they are. There's a lot of numbers being floated out there. No one knows if they're accurate or not accurate. Nobody knows what the stipulations are. Like you sign the NIL deal, it's like technically not supposed to be for basketball. It's supposed to be for like stuff outside of basketball, but we all know it's for the basketball. So what happens when a guy signs a deal and then doesn't really play and says, I'm quote unquote hurt or whatever, and doesn't want to, get out there and it just becomes like this foggy mess. And I think we're headed towards eventually just full blown professional basketball at the college level. It's just, I don't know the twists and turns it's going to have to take to get there.
Final question for you. With the 4 number 1 seeds, and this is the first time since I think '08 or so, do you think that's because of NIL and all the best players are just paid the most money and these teams are so stacked?
I don't think so yet, but it seems that way. Yeah, I think the real issue is going to be like I don't think the 4 teams being in the Final Four are because of that. I do think the lack of Cinderellas in this tournament because like frankly these 4 were the best all year, and I don't think it's because they were paying the most for their players or anything, but I do think that the the smaller schools pulling the upset, seeing like a 13 or 14 seed going to the Sweet 16, that sort of thing that didn't happen in this tournament, I am worried that that's going to become the norm moving forward because of the portal and the NIL. Because I mean, you saw that like this year, like how many small schools that won one game in the tournament are bringing back their coach next year? It's like St. Mary's and Gonzaga, if you want to count those as small schools. Every other small school that won, like every coach, every player on the school is just immediately, as soon as their season was over, went somewhere else. So I think that's going to be an issue moving forward. But I do think like the 4-1 seeds, I still think that's still going to be not exactly something that's going to happen every year. Even though this year, I mean, these were the 4 best teams all year, like by far all year. So like it's not exactly stunning that we ended up here. I think it's too early to say this is going to be the norm, but I am worried about the Cinderellas. I think the Cinderella stories are endangered for sure.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.